Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us for our fourth in a series of winemaker panel discussions hosted by the Consorcio Franciacorta this month of June as part of our first digital festival. My name is May Matta-Aliah, and I am the Educational Ambassador for Franciacorta in New York. I will be moderating today's discussion and the future discussions that we will be hosting. If you're not familiar with Franciacorta, or if this is your first time joining us, first of all, I'd like to welcome you and just tell you very briefly about Franciacorta. When you see the term on a label, it indicates that the wine is always sparkling, that the wine is always produced in the Franciacorta zone, which is around an hour from from Milan in the Lombardy region, and that it is created under the most stringent set of regulations that control pretty much every step of the production process. Today's discussion, we will be discussing Franciacorta Rosè. And as I'm sure most of you know, rosé wines have been incredibly popular, and that popularity does not show any sign of slowing down. So in Franciacorta, the rosé category has also been growing. And today I'm delighted to introduce our panelists who will tell us a little bit more about what defines a rosé in Franciacorta, the various styles of wines that we can expect, and some of the regulations that they are working under. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my panelists in no particular order. We're starting with Lara Imberti Radici from the Roncocalino Winery. Hello. Lara is the owner, and hi Lara. Lara is the owner and commercial office manager of the Roncocalino Winery, which was purchased by her husband, Paolo Radici, in 1996, with a dream of making wine for himself and some of his close friends. The ideal location of the property, surrounded by a perfectly situated monocru, soon drove him to expand the production and their circle of friends. Today, the small boutique company is focused on producing wines that express a true sense of the special place. Next, we have Marta Polli from the Mirabella Winery. Hi, Marta. Marta is the export sales manager for Mirabella, a winery, a family winery that was founded in 1979 by Teresio Schiavi. And today he is assisted by his two sons, Alberto and Alessandro. Born in Brescia and driven by a passion for all things wine, Marta found her way into the wine sector, starting with a job in a small winery in Lugana. And today she is a certified sommelier through the Italian Sommelier Association. And she is a wonderful communicator and advocate for the wines of Mirabella and the region at large. And thanks for joining us, Marta. And last but not least, certainly we have Simone Myonini from the Myonnini Winery. Hi, Simone. Simone is a third generation Mayonnini to be involved in the Mayonnini family business, which he co-owns and runs with his cousin Giovanni. The winery was founded in the late 1960s by his grandfather Valentino Mayonnini, but then after his passing in 1975, it went through a period of dormancy. Valentino's four sons brought it back to life with a renewed energy and focus in 1981. And today, Mayonnini is managed under certified sustainable and organic practices. So thank you for joining us. And we're going to kick off our discussion today by my first question to you, Lara, is quite simply, can you describe to us the production process for Franciacorta Rosè? And how do you obtain the pink color in the finished wine?
Hello to everybody. So it is important to know that in Franciacorta, the harvest must be made only by hand. Then we put the grapes in small plastic boxes to reach maximum weight maximum of 15, 17 kilos per each. And then we press the grapes. To produce a Franciacorta Rosé, you need absolutely one variety, and this variety is the Pinot Nero. So there is a big difference compared to the white grapes concerning the vinification. So in the case, in the Pinot Nero, for the Pinot Nero grapes, you can descend the grapes, okay? So after the pressing, you bring the mast with the skin of the, you use the mast and you the master remains in contact, the master remains in contact with the skin for long enough to give to the wine the desired color. So the Pinot Noir, the Pinot Nero, the Rosé can be pure, so 100% Pinot Noir, or blended with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So concerning the second question, you asked me about how can obtain the color.
Yeah.
So you must obtain the color before the bottling. So it is absolutely avoid to modify the color during the disgorgement.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. So just for people who may not be familiar with the term must, that is just our winemaking way of saying grape juice. And so it's just to understand that that's where we're getting the color from, in abbreviated contact between the juice and the skin. Great, thank you, Lara. So my next question to Simone, which Lara sort of started us with that conversation, is let's talk about the grape varieties. So what grape varieties are permitted in the production of Franciacorta Rosé?
The main rule in Franciacorta for the Rosé is to have a minimum quantity of Pinot Noir that is 35%. In Franciacorta, you use Chardonnay, Pinot Nero, Pinot Bianco, and Herba Mate. So all of them can be part of the production of a Pinot Noir, of a Rosé, but the main rule is the minimum quantity of Rosé. So you can produce a Rosé with 35% of Pinot Noir and the rest should be Chardonnay or Pinot Bianco or a little bit of Herba Mate, but the minimum quantity is 35% of Pinot Noir. As a producer of Rosé, we use only 100% of Pinot Noir, and we make the Rosé using the method of the cryo maceration. So we keep the juice and the skin together for a period of 6 hours, and then we squeeze it. So you have this light pink color. But you can mix different type of grape to produce a rosé.
Okay, great. So you can use any of them, if I'm understanding this correctly. You can use any of the permitted grape varieties in the region, but there is a legal minimum for Pinot Nero or Pinot Noir, which is 35%.
You have also a maximum quantity of Pinot Bianco that is 50%, and a maximum quantity of Herba Mate that is 10%.
Okay.
And so you can, I don't know, you can produce Pinot Nero with 35% of Pinot Nero, 50% of Pinot Bianco, and the rest can be Chardonnay or Herba Mate.
Gotcha. Okay, but you said for Mayonnini Winery, your choice is to make your rosé with 100% Pinot Nero.
Yes.
And that must be because you also have a fair amount of Pinot Nero, right?
Yeah, we are one of the few wineries in Franciacorta with a huge quantity of Pinot Nero. Our production today is around 60% Chardonnay and 40% Pinot Noir. And we are in the northeast part of Franciacorta, so we are in a hilly place. And is a place that is quite good for Pinot Noir grapes.
Great. Okay.
But the other interesting thing, in my point of view, is that we have in Franciacorta a commission that judge the color of the rosé, because a rosé must be a rosé. I don't know if you ever had some rosé that are gold or white or red. So this commission was specifically made from the consortium to authorize only the rosé that are pink.
Okay, that's interesting. Great, thank you, Simone. So, Lara, what about Roncocalino for your choice for rosé? Are you are you doing 100% Pinot Noir? Are you blending?
Yes, like Mayonnini, like Simone, Roncocalino produce a rosé made only by Pinot Noir, 100% Pinot Noir. Luckily, we have 25% of surface planted in Pinot Noir, so we can use only this.
Wow. Okay, which is, by the way, I think the average for, or the percentage of Pinot Noir in the region is 15%, if I think holistically. So that's impressive that you have 25, and in the case of Mayonnini, you have 40%. Great, thank you, Lara. And Marta, what about Mirabella? I know your style is quite different when it comes to your rosé.
Actually, Mirabella produced since the 1982 an unconventional rosé. Mirabella believed in a Pinot Bianco style, and so we put a touch of Pinot Bianco also in our rosé, 45 Pinot Noir, so a good percentage of Pinot Noir, 45 Chardonnay, and our 10% Pinot Bianco style, able to refresh the structure and to make Pinot Nero a little bit more gentle. So this is our interpretation of the rosé style in Franciacorta.
Yeah, I love it because I think it's also, I mean, one of the things I always find interesting is that I love diversity, and I love that you all have very different expressions, and I think that's really how it should be. Great. So Marta, I'm actually going to stay with you, and my next question is more about the little bit of technicalities. So for the rosé, we've talked about the minimum 35%. Pinot Nero can go up to 100%. What about aging? What is the minimum aging requirement on the lees for Franciacorta Rosé?
So for the general trend, the general minimum is 24 months on the lees. Okay. But in rosé world, you can have also millesimato typology and riserva typology. So aging is a little bit more is higher, and so for the millesimato rosé, you need 30 months on the lees, 37 starting from the harvest, and for the riserva typology, you need the minimum 60 months, so 5 years on the lees, 67 months starting from the harvest, but the minimum is 24.
Okay. Okay, good to know. And then what about the dosage? Is there a typical dosage style for the rosé? Are they mostly brut? Are they dosage zero? Is there a, you know, what's the...
Yeah, actually, rosé typology could embrace all the range, starting from the pas dosé, no dosage, through extra brut, brut, extra dry, dry, and demi-sec. But the main versatile in terms also of volume is brut. So the trend is represented by brut rosé. Then you can find also an interesting number of extra dry and demi-sec. So we can say that rosé sometimes could be the typology in Franciacorta a little bit more sweeter. The few quantity of demi-sec you can find in Franciacorta is mainly about rosé. So the dessert wine in Franciacorta generally is represented by rosé typology. So this is the situation. Anyway, brut is the trend.
Okay. And what's the Mirabella typical dosage for the rosé?
Actually, we have two different interpretations. The first one is our basic one, and is generally 36 months minimum. Anyway, not so few. And then we have also a riserva interpretation. We make more than 60. The last one we had was around 10 years on the lease.
Okay, and the dosage, is there a typical dosage level?
So, sorry, the dosage brut. Sorry, the dosage is brut for us, around 5 grams of sugar, and for the pas dosé, no dosage, of course, so under 3.
Okay, and Lara, what about the Roncocalino? Is there a typical dosage that you go for in the style?
So in our company, we produce only one rosé, okay, and is Radijan, 100% Pinot Noir, and the dosage is normally very, very low. So from 3 to 5 grams per liter, but it depends on the harvest, it depends on the acidity, and so every year can change the dosage, but normally is no more than 6 grams per liter of sugar.
Okay. Great. And at Mayonnini, Simone?
It depends a lot on harvest. You have harvests that are quite rich of glycerol, that in that case, you don't need a lot of sugar, so you can go on market with 0 sugar, a Pas Rosé, but you have also vintages quite dry with a high level of acidity, so you're going to need a little bit more of sugar. My range usually is in between 0 and 5 grams, but it happened in the past. We had vintages with 9 grams of sugar. It's quite rare, but it happened. And also for us, we produce 2 styles of rosé. One is the brut one. We just declare brut, even if it's a Pas Rosé. And the other is demi-sec, so a little bit sweeter than the other.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious to taste the rosé demi-sec. Now, I haven't actually tasted one, so that's interesting. But what's also interesting is you know, all of your dosage levels, even though you're positioning as brut, is really quite low. I mean, they're really more like a brut nature. So that's really interesting.
The trend today for all Franciacorta wines is to have a quite low level of sugar, generally speaking. Also, the brut now is in between 3 and 4 grams of sugar.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the kind of climate change. So the weather now is quite hot, so it's quite easy to have more Glicerolo in your wine, but the trend is to have quite dry wines.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So that's super interesting. And I'm going to go back to you, Marta, for my last question. What do you think is the ageability of rosé? Can Franciacorta Rosé wines age? Is there and your style, because you make 2, you said.
I am absolutely sure that rosé can assure good performance in terms of aging on the lees, but also after disgorging. As I was telling you before, our Riserva makes something like 10 years on the lees. So the main character of this superpower is for sure represented by the Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is the personality, the longevity, the body, the structure. Thanks to Pinot Noir, you can work like this, and everything started in the vineyard. So you can decide to make a Riserva after the harvest, after the vinification. You have to decide, okay, this Pinot Noir, this Rosé will be a Riserva, will stay on the lees for 5, 6, 10 years, but you have to decide it before everything started with the harvest, for sure.
Great, thank you. So I love it because whether you plan to or not, Marta, you set us up for the discussion on the Riserva, which is our last session that we're doing. And Simone, you set us up for the Dosage Zero conversation, which we're having on Wednesday. So we're touching on all the upcoming topics that we're going to have. Okay, great. So so we're talking about wine. We've got to talk about food because I personally love Franciacorta with food. So tell me about some of your favorite pairings. Simone, what's your favorite pairing for your Pinot Nero and Mayonnini?
Okay, so I'm Italian. I would love to have a rosé with a beautiful girl, my wife, of course, and some caviar, or maybe if I'm away from my wife, a good pizza and some friends and a good rosé. I think is the best match.
Good combination. So you're starting with the company. Nice. And Marta, what about you? What's your favorite pairing?
I can tell you something about my last Sunday. So a super barbecue, grill meat with my friends and rosé bubbles, the rocks. And my last lunch, so tataki tuna, and it was perfect too. So rosé is really, really versatile and easygoing, absolutely.
Yummy. Lara?
Mine is simple food pairing because I love rosé with mortadella. Mortadella is in Italian salumi. Perhaps you know the name, this kind of salumi with the name of Bologna. Okay, so this salumi is rather fat, and I think it matches very well with rosé, thanks to the structure and freshness of rosé that clean very well the mouth and permit to taste your mortadella without covering his flavor.
Thank you. I love it. So we've got everything from mortadella to caviar to tacos. Well, and I'll tell you, I personally had a big Father's Day barbecue yesterday, and we had a rosé, and it was a very Mediterranean theme. So we had hummus, and because I was hailing to my Lebanese background, and it paired beautifully with that as well. So it's very, very versatile. Okay, so Simone, just a quick question. What is the percentage of production of rosé today in Franciacorta, and do you think that it will continue to increase? I mean, if you had a crystal ball, what do you predict for the future trends?
Now is in between 12 and 15%, but is increasing year through year. Is a trendy wine. First of all, it's beautiful to see. Second is in my point of view, is the easiest wine to match with food, because you can go from raw fish to meat. Everything goes very well with rosé. And the third thing is starting to be a quite good wine all around the world, not only in Franciacorta. So it's increasing little by little. Of course, we are talking about a small quantity. We are still talking about a small quantity, but it's increasing.
Great. I think Lara, my last question was for you, and Simone sort of answered a little bit of it. But why do you think that rosé has become so popular? I mean, I know here in the spring, any place you walk into now, stores, it's a wall of rosé, and it's not slowing down. So any ideas why it's become so popular?
So maybe as it is my favorite wine, I'm joking now. So searching on the net, I found that Rose is the best-selling flower in the US. So I think that this name sounds friendly to the Americans. In the meantime, in the last 10 years, social media had helped to increase the rosé reputation. And then also rosé wines from France, in particular Provence, are very well known in the US. And celebrities as Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt had invested in Provence. They are producing rosé wine. So it became, for my opinion, more popular. Nowadays, the millennials, thanks to the social media, thanks to the celebrities, they are more curious and open-minded to taste something different from a white or red still wines. Because rosé seems more drinkable, more easy, more light, and more pretty. So maybe, for my opinion, this is my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think for sure it is very pretty to look at, and it is. I find it incredibly versatile, and it really can sort of pair with a lot of different things. And that's one of the things that we really also love to talk about, is just how food-friendly Franciacorta really is, and to really enjoy it. For me, when it really shines is when I put it with food, actually. Okay, so this sort of concludes our brief discussion, but we have some questions that we would like to, I believe we have some questions from our audience, and we have Constance joining us to ask you some questions. So Constance, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Perfect. So just a few today, and I apologize if this is a little redundant, Simone, but what percentage of your vineyards are planted with Pinot Nero, and is that typical of the region?
No, it's not. It's not typical of the region. The total quantity of Pinot Nero in Franciacorta is in between 12 and 13% today. We have 40% of Pinot Nero, but we are in I already told this, but we are in the northeast part of Franciacorta, so we are in a hilly place, quite hilly. So Pinot Nero needs a lot of difference in temperature between day and night, and needs also somehow a windy place, because it's a very delicate grape. And if you are in a hilly place, you are going to have a huge difference in temperature between night and day, and you are going to have also wind, a light wind that dries very well the grape. So that's why we have such a quantity of Pinot Nero. But I mean, the quantity of Pinot Nero in Franciacorta is increasing, first of all. Also, I think the Pinot Bianco is increasing a little bit because of the climate change. So we need grapes that gives some acidity to the wine. So we are going to see also all the new plantation with Herba Mate and Pinot Nero and Pinot Bianco.
Great. Also, another question just came in. I think you touched on this earlier, Simone. So is there a rule for the pink level in the color of rosé?
You have the commission that judge the color of the rosé, because again, a rosé must be rosé, not gold, not white, or not red. And to tell you the truth, a few years ago, something like 10 years ago, we had a rosé that wasn't admitted for the DOCG. So we had to sell it as a table wine, not as a Franciacorta, because it was a little bit too red. So the color, if you make a cryo maceration, the color depends on how hot or how cold was the harvest. If you have a very, very hot season, a very, very hot harvest, you are going to have a quite red rosé. If you have a kind of cold weather, you're going to have a very light color. So it can happen that you have a quite red rosé or a quite light pink rosé. And the commission is made for that, to judge the color of the rosé. That is correct, because if you sell a rosé, it must be rosé, pink.
Perfect. We just had another question come in. I'm not sure who can answer this, but maybe you can, Marta. Does Franciacorta have any plans to join the Rosé Consortium? Why or why not?
So to add a second consortium?
For Rosé specifically, I actually don't know about this consortium. Maybe somebody else does. But
at the moment, I think we don't need it. is right now one consortium, and we don't need it because Rosé represents only one typology in a big world, and so yeah, we need something able to embrace everything, not only one typology for sure.
We don't have only the consortium to judge our wines. We have also Valor Italia, so to commission, I think, is more than enough.
Right enough.
Fair enough. All right, Lara, what does the name of your winery mean? Does Ronco have a local meaning?
So Ronco Calino is a fantasy name created by my husband Paolo, and Calino is a frazione di Cazzago San Martino. Frazione means a plot of Cazzago San Martino, one of the 19 municipalities of Franciacorta. And Ronco comes from an Italian verb, roncare. Roncare is when you use a special tool, then you cut the wood, and then the land then remain, the free land that remain, you can plant vineyard normally or other agricultural activity.
Great. And Marta, what is Franciacorta doing to promote the category to millennials today?
Yeah, Lara from Ronco Calino talked about millennials, use these words before, and it's something we have to compare with, to focus on. Just to put on the table one number, the core wine drinker in US represents something like 15% on the total. So we are talking about a real little piece of the cake, and we have to work with this little piece of the cake. But in this small 15%, millennials represent something like 40% of the total consumer. So even if they are really interested in affordable luxury products, I think that Franciacorta could give to them an interesting offer, an interesting answer, because we are ready to propose and promote something really in line with their need of purity, authenticity, and the openness. So Franciacorta is absolutely ready to make this, I'm absolutely sure.
Great. Well, I think that's all of the questions for today. So thank you, and I'm gonna pop off.